right, here's where it gets interesting. Now we start graphing again. Some of you are like, oh, no. Hey, I like the numbers. I don't want to do the graphing. Well, you're going to have to do the graphing on the final. You're going to have to do the graphing on the AP test. And so then you're also going to have to look at graphs and identify things. And so we're going to talk about, in this next video here, about how do we actually graph a perfectly competitive firm in the short run and the long run, and how do we determine what the profit is. So I will be writing on the TV and adding different kind of information, and get my marker here. And so these are the steps. These are the steps for how do you graph perfect competition in the short run, earning a profit. So first thing is you want to graph your short run production costs. The second thing we're going to do is you're going to use marginal analysis, identify the optimal quantity. And then we're going to go through and follow the rest of these steps. So if you want to write these down in your notes, you can find a spot to write these down in your notes. But now I'm going to show you. So here's what we do. All right, here's where the magic happens. You ready? So we're going to graph perfect competition in the short run, earning a profit. Now I'm going to highlight two different things. How do we know if this is the short run? Ask yourself, what kind of graphs do we need to draw here? Well, we need to draw short run production graphs. That means we have to draw the graphs that is showing the firm in the short run, which are these graphs here. Marginal cost, AVC, and ATC. Right? So as we go through and graph, you're going to need to pause the video, start the video, pause the video, start the video. So please feel free to be able to do that. But these are the short run production costs. Right now I haven't shown anything about profit yet because I haven't added in what the price line is. Right? So you know what? Actually, in doing this, I'm going to erase this for a second. And what I'm going to show you is I'm going to, instead of showing you two that way here, I need to show you perfect competition. So that means I have to show you the industry first and then the firm. Okay, so I should take a step back. But, so we already talked about this, and if we want them to earn an economic profit, that means that the price line that we draw at the optimal quantity, where MR equals MC, has to be above the ATC. That's what we'll do. So let's first, whenever you're doing this, you have to, every time you're doing perfect competition, you can't draw the firm without the industry. So this is going to be my industry, and the industry is simply your supply and demand, right? You first have to get your supply-demand curve, and then remember that the equilibrium price and quantity is at the equilibrium point of the industry. So that's one thing. And again, remember, start and stop your video so you can keep up with how the graphic is. So now what we do is we have to figure out what the firm is. Well, remember in perfect competition, because each firm is a price taker, they have to take the price from the industry, and this price, since the price is constant, is perfectly elastic, and we have Mr. Dart, that means that the price is equal to MR, is equal to demand, is equal to average revenue. And if you don't remember why this is, you're going to have to go back to one of the other videos, the second video, to find out about price and being equal to MR and D and AR, right? So I'm not going to go through and spend time in this video highlighting that again because we've already covered that. So you may have to go back. If you don't know, I would say pause the video, go back to the second video about halfway through when we start talking about price, demand, MR, and AR, about why they're the same exact thing. It was that big table that we did. Okay, so now we have this price line. Well, we have our perfectly competitive industry and firm. Well, now I have to show them earning a profit. So here's where now we have to add in our short-run production costs. So we'll add in a marginal cost. We'll add in our ABC. And then we'll add in, and guys, it doesn't matter if I start the ATC here, if I start it here, that does not matter. What matters is the relationship that ATC has at the optimal quantity. So I'm just going to start here. You go down, and now of course I'm going up again. It's getting closer and closer. It's getting closer and closer to the ABC without touching. And so these are our short-run production costs. and this is showing that we are making a profit. So now we have to identify where is the profit maximizing quantity. So these are the step-by-step processes of how to actually show this. So the first thing is we know what our price is. So where's my optimal quantity? Based on this, I want you visually, and if you need to, we can pause the video after I ask this question. Where would the optimal quantity be for this graph? So pause, answer that question. Here it is. If we are any firm, you maximize profit where MR equals MC. Well, here's my MR, here's my MC, and so that's where my quantity is. And one of the different things that I'll highlight for you is this is something that I learned about 30-some years ago, and I still practice it these days. There's not a right or wrong answer. For the industry, I use a capital Q. For the firm, I use a baby Q. All right, so you can keep it as a big Q, it doesn't matter. That's just me. That's my way of differentiating industry and firm. So big Q, small q. And so now that we have our profit maximizing price and our profit maximizing quantity, because that's where marginal cost is actually equal to each other, what then you do is you have to then figure out what is the difference between price and ATC at the optimal quantity. So that's, remember we've done it different times. Add these dots, right? We're adding dots again. And so you add these two dots, and then now this area right here, this represents my profit per unit. Because the difference between price and ATC is your profit per unit. Well, now what I have to do is, now I have to find out what my overall profit is. Well, overall profit is your price minus ATC times quantity. So now once you're here, I have to now go dot, 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 dot. That is my price per unit, which is this. I'm not price per unit. This is my profit per unit times quantity. Profit per unit times quantity. And then what you do is you're going to be asked many times to shade it in. Okay, so again, remember, pause the video, stop it, start it, stop it, so you can get this and make sure that you are doing it just like I have it. And one key thing to keep in mind is this area right here. You cannot, this will be counted wrong. If you shade the profits and you draw a bunch of lines and you don't put anything in there, I would tell you that you did not shade your profit correctly. Because the profit is everywhere from the price to the ATC and then over. And so you have to also shade in that little box there. And later on in the different chapters, 14, 15, and 16, we'll identify deadweight loss again. In perfect competition, we'll explain to you later on in a different video why we don't have deadweight loss in this. Okay, so as we look through, this is how you actually go through and identify and show and graph a perfectly competitive firm earning short-run economic profits. Right? So there it is. And if you need to go back and review a couple different things, you can certainly go back and review that. You can pause the video. I will erase all my information. I'm very thankful that this comes off really easily off of a TV. And then we'll show you the next one. All right, so that is perfect competition earning a profit. And so this is these we're going to look at some different numbers here. So if we look at, I'm just going to go back and look at this was profit, and we already looked at these profit numbers, right? So that's how we're making a profit. Now the next thing is, as you look ahead, is this. There's something called the loss minimizing case for perfect competition. So the loss minimizing case for perfect competition is we are trying to find out where is my optimal quantity where I am minimizing my losses. So I want to produce, but I know I'm producing at an economic loss, but I want to keep producing, and so that's what we're going to prove here. We're using numbers, then we're going to graph it. So as we look at this information, you have kind of a cheat code here because you have your profit and loss column is already given to you. If we didn't have that, right, I'm just going to hide these numbers, and I don't even know if I'm still on the camera. right? If you're looking at these numbers and identify using MR and MC, optimal quantity, where does MR equal MC at the very last time, while MR is still more than MC, and what would the output be? Well, remember the method. Let's keep going down, and you go down until marginal cost is more than marginal revenue, and then you go up one. And so you would identify the fact in this example that what quantity is your loss minimized? We would say your loss minimized, your optimal quantity would be at a quantity of 6. Because if you go to 7, your marginal cost is more than marginal revenue. And so now my profit, now I'm actually losing, my profit is actually, I'm losing more money. So you're no longer making a profit because look at here, this $81 is your MR, but that $81 also represents your price. And so your $81 of a price, I want to find out, how do I know if I'm profitable or not? Well, profit is price minus ATC because price is your average revenue and ATC is your average cost. You have to compare those. ATC is more than here. Losing money, losing money, losing money, losing money, losing money, losing money. We're losing for all of these because my price is less than my ATC at all of these points. And remember, we're talking about economic profit. We're not talking about accounting profit. Economic profit, some of you may look at this and say, why would a business produce if they're losing money? Remember that if it's economic, we're including our implicit costs. And so we're looking at this like this business here, if they're producing 6, their economic loss is $64. That doesn't mean they're not making an accounting profit. They could be making an accounting profit. But once you have that accounting profit, you have to subtract the implicit cost from that. And that's what you get to your, that's how you get to your economic profit. And so I wanted to make that statement again because sometimes people get confused about, well, wait a minute, why would a business keep producing here? If I have a loss, what this is telling me, if I produce 6, I'm losing $64. And what we're going to find out in a few minutes is that this business should still produce because if they shut down, they're going to lose more money. And that's what we're going to prove to you in a second. This is why the business actually produces. So here's what we figured out, the reason why it's at 6. The price is less than ATC at a quantity of 6 where MR is closest to MC without marginal cost being more, right? And so then when we see how much is the loss per unit, well, the loss per unit, if I'm making 6, the difference between 81 and $10.67, because loss per unit, if we're talking about profit or loss per unit, it's price minus ATC. Not MR and MC. And so my loss is $10.67 per unit. And then what's the overall loss? Well, the overall loss is $10.67 times 6, which is $64. The wonders of math. So if we compare price and ABC, here's where we get to our point. Looking at this at the quantity of 6, here's why we are going to keep producing. This is probably the hardest one to understand out of these different things. And so this is why I spent a little bit more time on this one. When you look at the difference between your price and AVC here at a quantity of 6, my price is more than my AVC. And you may think, well, why the heck does that matter? And so, well, once you figure out that your price is more than the average variable cost at the optimal quantity, right? What that tells you is that if price is more than ABC at the optimal quantity, I should produce. Here's why, right? So, and I'm going to kind of talk this through, and so hopefully you can take what I'm saying and jot it down in your notes so you understand why I'm going to produce. Because let's see, if I was able to do, I wonder if I can do this. No, that shows you something else. If I look at this example at 6, think about this. If I was to shut down, how much money would I lose? Pause the video, figure out the answer. How much money would I lose? If I shut down and produce 0, I lose $100. Ask yourself, why do I lose $100? Because we previously figured out in these numbers here that my fixed cost was $100. So if I shut down my business, like Valley Fair, If it's November and I shut everything down, I still have my marketing people and different things, but I'm not running the actual amusement park. So I am basically, I have 0 clients coming in. I'm not bringing in any kind of revenue. And so that means I still have to pay for my fixed costs. So if I shut down, I lose $100. So my question to you is this: do you like money? If I was to say, would you rather lose $64 or would you rather lose $100? Most of you, I hope, would say, I'd rather lose 64 than 100. And so this is why you produce. And so we are going to produce because we're only losing $64 if we produce six units. But if we shut down, we're losing 100. Right? So here's how the ABC really relates to this. The ABC relates that anytime at your optimal quantity, you can figure out if you produce. If at your optimal quantity, your price or your MR is more than the ABC at the optimal quantity, if that's the case, you are going to produce. Because it means that I am making enough revenue to cover all of my variable costs and some of my fixed costs. Right? So I am covering, if you look at the ABC, right, I am covering all of my variable. I'm covering the my labor. I'm covering all the sugar, the sugar for the cotton candy. I'm covering my electricity. I'm covering all that stuff. So I'm making enough revenue to cover all those things and to pay all my vendors. And I have a little bit of money left over to pay some of my fixed costs. And so in the end, if your price line is more than your ABC at a quantity, at the optimal quantity, you will produce. Now, you'll have to use price and ATC to find out if you're making a profit or not. But that's the big piece about that, okay? That's the big piece. So now what we'll do is we'll look at, I have these out of order, so I apologize. I'm going to show you what it looks like for a loss minimizing case. I'm going to graph that for perfect competition. Remember, in perfect competition, I have to start with my industry. And so you have to start with your supply demand curve, my price, and my quantity for the industry. Remember, you can pause the video, start and stop it to keep up with me with my graphing. I am a price taker, so thus I have each firm has to take the price from the industry. Here's my new price for the firm, and then my MR, demand, and AR. So it's beneficial for you to include all of those different kind of things. The more often that you do it in practice, the more that you will remember. So now here's my price line. And just like last time, I need to add in my short-run production costs. Here's marginal cost. Here's your ABC. And now the trick is I'm going to draw an ATC. But remember, if I have a loss at the optimal quantity, my price has to be less than ATC. So I am going to draw the ATC like this. And so everything looks like a perfectly fine short-run production cost, and what we just found out is this. Once I have that, find your optimal quantity. So you've put your short-run production costs in here. Baby Q, right? There's my profit maximizing price and quantity for the firm. And now I have to show what it looks like if I'm losing money. If I'm losing money, I have to go straight up here. Look at the difference. Look at the difference between at the optimal quantity where the price line is to your ATC. You go straight up. Remember, you have to make, here's one dot, here's the ATC. And so this area represents my loss per unit, and I have to multiply that times my quantity. And so you go for your profit maximizing, go to your ATC. If it's up or down, in this case it's up, so I go up, and I have to go over, multiply by the quantity, and then you go in and you shade. And you see how I stopped right there. I stopped right there. You have to stop at this line where the optimal quantity is for the ATC. And so you can pause it again to make sure you can finish this information out. And then what you would do is you'd say this. This is my loss. or you could say this is your negative profit. But I know I'm still going to produce here, because look at the difference here. Here's my revenue. I am making enough revenue to cover all of my average variable cost. Price is above average variable cost. And then the difference between here is the part of the average fixed cost that I'm actually paying. Right? So that is how we actually graph a perfectly competitive firm in a loss minimizing case. Or this is really graphing perfect competition and showing them actually having a loss. Right? So that's really what we're looking at here. All right, so I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna erase this. I'm gonna go on to the last example, and then we'll see how we can break this up and finish this video off. All right, so let's go through and figure out, see what our next one is. So the next one, let me just take a look at this. All right, so this example here is I want you, before I do anything else, figure out where would the optimal quantity be using MR and MC, right? So that's what this is. What quantity is loss minimized? Figure it out. Pausing. Here it is. The answer is find MR and MC. Where is MR more than MC at the last unit? MR is more, MR is more. Okay, at a unit of, at 6, that's too much, so I have to go back up 1. Right, because marginal cost is more than marginal revenue, so I go up 1. Right, so if you go up 1 at a quantity of 5, if we were to produce, and we're going to find out at the very end, the last question is, should we produce or not? What quantity? If we're going to produce 5, I would be minimizing my loss at a quantity of 5. You can see $115 is less than, is less than 116. And why did it go down by 1? Because marginal revenue is more than marginal cost by $1. Right? So now the question is, as we go through here, we know we're losing money at 5. $71 is less than $94. So we know we're losing money. We're losing $115. And so we can look at the next one. What's the loss per unit? The loss per unit is $23. $23 is 94 minus 71. Because remember, price minus ATC. So 71 minus 94 is negative 23 times 5 is $115. So again, how are we calculating? How are we finding this information? So negative 23. Compare my price and ABC now to figure out, should I produce? Well, at a quantity of 5, $71, which is my price and my MR, is less than my ABC. So at the optimal quantity, price is less than ABC. All right, so if your price is less than ABC, which is showing right here, should we produce or not? And hopefully in your head you said, well, no, because I just said a few minutes ago, you only produce when price is more than ABC. So if your price is less than ABC, excuse me, you shut down. So I want you to look at here. If we shut down and produce at 0, what is your loss? I hope you figured out that I would lose $100. So I ask you, kind person, would you rather lose $100 or $115? And I hope that every single one of you said, well, I guess I'd rather lose 100. I don't want to lose 100, but I guess I'd rather lose 100. So in this case here, if our price is less than ABC, when you look at number-wise, that means that we are going to shut down the business because $115 is more of a loss than $100. Right? So that's the big piece. So let's look at how we're going to graph this. So this is how it ends up being graphed. That was the previous one. So my slides are out of order. I apologize. I'll fix that when I actually, if you look through the actual slides yourself. So this is a shutdown case. How do I know how do I graph a business actually shutting down? Well, here's what you do. Again, remember it's perfect competition, so we have to draw our industry graph first. Supply, demand, P, big Q. I have price takers. So I have to find what my price is for the perfectly competitive firm. MR, demand, AR, right? So now this is the established. Now I have to add in all my other stuff. So in this case here, Here's marginal cost. And now I have to find out, you know what, I probably should have put that up a little bit higher, right? I have to find out, I have to add in my ABC, but I have to make sure my ABC at the optimal quantity, which in this case here, optimal quantity is baby Q, is there. And so once you do that, now you can add in your ABC. ABC. And I know this got a little bit wonky, I just didn't want to erase it. So what you could have done is it could have been like this. You know, here's your marginal cost, then your ABC is going down. It can actually, it can't get to its minimum and hit here until you get to the optimal quantity, or until you get to marginal cost. Well, now, I'm just gonna redo that so it's a little bit cleaner for us. Here's my marginal cost. Here's my ABC again. And so my ATC is there, right? Do you see that every time I'm drawing this, when I drew the ATC and ABC, I do it in two different parts? Remember that? So I just don't go one loop. That ensures that these 2 points are the minimum points. Here's a minimum, I'm going up like that, right? So just make sure you kind of see that. As you do this, if this is I change my optimal quantity. So my optimal quantity is down here now. And so once you have that, you have to go up now to your ATC. And then I have to go over. That entire area would be your loss. It would be. Okay, but we're going to find out we're not going to produce in this example. And the reason is because at the optimal quantity, my optimal quantity is less than my average variable cost. So that's what creates the numbers behind the fact that it's better if I actually shut down and just take my loss than if I was to actually produce. Because if I actually produce, my loss, I wish I had a different color marker, here is my loss if I produce. But if I shut down, this is my loss if you shut down. Look at how this space from here to here is smaller than that space. So that's the loss, that's the shutdown case for perfect competition if you are below this point, right? That is the key thing that I want you to nail, is the relationship between price and ABC tells you if you should produce or if you should shut down. Again, pause the video if you need to review it, rewind, watch it again, figure out how that is, and so it gives you that time. This is a different way of graphing it, same exact area. You can see here's my optimal quantity, and then at this optimal quantity, I'm less than ABC, and so that would be I'm actually shutting down. So here's kind of a summary as we put these different things together, right? To break up this last video piece is if we go back to this, and I'm going to give you a couple of bits of information along with this, right? If we look at a couple bits, that next slide there is the whole summary. Anytime that your price is above the ATC here, you're making a profit. But here's what I also want to show you. And maybe what I'll do is I'll do this. Maybe I'm going to actually graph this again. And I'm going to show you, I'm just for simplicity, I'm not going to do the industry. I know I told you should do that every single time, but I just want to show you as a sample of something. Here's a marginal cost. There's the ABC. Here's my ATC, right? So if I was to put, if your price line, we talked about a price line being up here, you're making a profit because you know that my price is greater than the ATC. But if your price ends up being right there, well, this is an example. This is called your break-even point. The reason is because this quantity down here at this quantity, my price equals ATC. And earlier on, I think in the last video, you figured out that when price equals ATC, I'm breaking even. I have a normal profit. And so that's where, if you're breaking even, it's when at the optimal quantity, your price is at the minimum point of the ATC. That is going to come back. We're going to talk about that a lot more later on in another video. But that's a key thing for you to be able to see. So that's the break-even point. The shutdown point is if your optimal quantity is right here. And if your optimal quantity is where price equals a VC, this is called the shutdown point. So if your price is equal to average variable cost, you have a decision to make. And your decision is this: if I produce, I am going to lose $100. If I shut down, I lose $100. Here's the dilemma. Should I produce or should I shut down? Because losing $100 either way is the same exact thing. Here's the determinant. To help you figure out what you should do in this case, is you got to figure out what kind of business are you. Can your business afford to produce and lose $100? Or can you continue to do that by producing and going through all that work? Well, here's the thing. Small businesses sometimes can't afford this because they can't produce and sustain losses for very long. But if you were a big business, say Valley Fair, who's making a lot of money, been around for a long time, they are able to withstand a loss for a small amount of time, maybe because when they actually produce, they're making a ton of money. So they have a lot of money in savings. So the shutdown point for you, yes, you have to make a decision because you're losing $100 either way. But the decision for you is, if you're a small business, you maybe have to shut down and permanently, like in the long run. You just have to be done. If you're a large business, you can shut down temporarily in the short run, and you can withstand some losses for a small amount of time. And then once the price comes back up, because the market changed, now you're able to produce again. But a small business may not be able to withstand that. And so that's kind of what happened to COVID. During COVID, a bunch of small businesses and restaurants shut down because they didn't have enough capital. They didn't have enough money in the savings to offset all these losses. But the big businesses, they can withstand that. So I hope that helps in understanding what these two different points are. The break-even point. Again, everything is about the relationship between price and ATC. That's how you look at the profit line. So as we go through and get you into the final conclusion piece, this conclusion one here, as we look at, is here. These 2 pages, I'm not going to say much about because it kind of speaks for itself. We've kind of explained all this. This is just a way to basically look at, when am I profitable? You use price and ATC to find profit. So please highlight that, circle that, do something where you know to find profit, I have to compare price and ATC. But if I'm trying to answer, should I produce or not, that's the relationship between price and AVC. So at some point, you can certainly pause this so you can get this down in your notes to make sure that makes sense. Just make sure you're highlighting that price and ATC is profitable. This is another slide. This provides more of an overview. It provides more detail here, right? It provides more detail that we'll get into in a different video. All right, but you can again pause it and add those kind of notes in there. But I'm going to go through quickly a couple different examples here, and then we'll talk about a handout, then you'll do a handout, a packet, and things of that nature. So if we look at this, should I produce or should I shut down? 2 samples. If a profit maximizing firm has an economic loss when they're producing of $10,000, but their fixed cost is $15,000, what should they do? Well, hopefully you would say, well, this firm here should produce, because if they shut down, they're losing $15,000. But if they produce, they're only losing $10,000. Right? So the second one, though, same business, but their fixed costs are $6,000. Well, this firm here would shut down because if they shut down, they only lose $6,000. But if they produced, they would lose 10. And so it doesn't make sense to produce and be losing 10,000 when you could shut down in the short run, temporarily, possibly, and lose $6,000. But again, if a business decides to shut down, you either are shutting down for the short run and starting up later on, or some businesses, if you can't sustain that, you got to exit the industry completely, right? So those are different kind of things we look at. There are some explanations here on that. You can pause it to read through that a little bit more. And so here's a couple different things that we'll do. So at this point here, don't shut the video off yet. Don't jump into the next thing. You're going to go through and do check understanding number 3. And then after doing check understanding number 3, there's a handout for you. You should do the break-even shutdown in PC. And so this has you look at some of the different graphs that we did, and it asks you answer questions off of those different kind of graphs. And in the agenda, the key will be there in the agenda as well. Once you're done with that, do check understanding number 4 to make sure you understand that information. All right, so, and once you do that, this is the next video. Once you do that, that's it for this video. And then until next time, AP Micro, peace out.